Nor shall you be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Are you confused by that? That's the Fifth Amendment. That's not just for IRS officials anymore. Fifth Amendment does protect you and myself. And I'll read it again. Be deprived, nor shall you be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Well, what does that have to do with Radio Realty today? It's going to be a great program. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in Real Estate, broadcasting live from the corner of West Hill and the Sterling Highway. Dave Webb is the engineer and broadcast producer back up at the mothership of KPEN 102 FM or 1017, wherever you hear this best. Fax a friend, phone a friend, text a friend, tell everyone you know. Today is the day you do not want to miss Radio Realty. We've got Michael Droege coming on the program in just a little bit. He is the president of the Alaska Association of Realtors. Did you pick up your copy? Not that you need to pay for it. Don't worry about that. Just get it online for free. It's the Peninsula Clarion, Chicago-based organization, joins anadromous stream fight. I'm going to talk to Michael about that. I'm also quoted in the Homer Tribune. I'll read from that on the anadromous streams, quote-unquote, fight. And it's actually a fight for your private property rights. It isn't about salmon at all, never has been. It's about your private property rights and your liberty and due process of law, or the ignoring of due process of law. The second half of the program, Kelly Wolf, Assemblyman Kelly Wolf, will be here to tell you and I exactly what he's doing to repeal 2011-12, the anadromous streams ordinance that was passed under the cover of darkness. And that does sound a bit theatrical, doesn't it? Well, when you do something that wildly, radically, drastically affects my use of my property, and you don't tell me you're thinking about doing this, you don't tell me that public hearings are going on relative to the use of my property, I wake up on a Monday morning and check the mail like normal, and in there is a thick booklet that will dictate the rest of my ownership of my property and how I go about using it. That, my friend, is a bypassing, at its minimum, a bypassing of due process of law. Well, go try to cut a lot in half, or here's one even better. Try to separate, try to erase a lot line or vacate a lot line. Guess what happens? Automatically notice given to all of your surrounding property neighbors. Why? Why would notice be given that I'm going to make a 2.5 acre lot next to another 2.5 acre lot into a 5 acre lot? Why would I have to give them notice? Because it could have impact on their enjoyment, their use, and their value of their property. Well, what if I was going to go cut 50 feet of your property off? Ought I not give you notice that, hey, by the way, remember that property you used to own abutting this river or lake or creek or stream or dribble? You remember that? Remember when you owned that and you could do what you wanted to there, so long as you were within your rights and you abided by the rules set out by Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, EPA, DEC, and Army Corps of Engineers? Remember that property? Yeah, that's not yours anymore. No, you're going to pay taxes on it. Don't get me wrong. You get the full pleasure of supporting, our schools and our roads and the borough $775,000 budget at the River Center. You get to pay for all of that. Not to worry, but you can't use it as you see fit. You remember that on this very program, I told you about a friend of mine that was underneath the 1996 21.18 ordinance. 21.18 was the name of the ordinance that was the original anadromous streams ordinance that covered, I believe, the Kenai River and the Anchor River. Need to double check that it did include Anchor on that first one. It was in 1996. She's lived under this all those years since. Fine. Kenai River is an obvious place that you'd want to protect. Am I right? Of course. I mean, that's an obvious place. Is the borough the right officiality and the right person to do that? That's a different conversation. Nevertheless, it's passed. It's there. It's been there for a long time. She and her association homeowners association, went to get permission to cut a tree that was imminently falling in a moment. It's going to be falling into the river, leaving behind it a chasm where once a root mass was. And what do you think is going to happen there? Continued erosion. Better off to leave the root mass in place intact as a barrier to the erosive nature of the river. It's a better barrier than one could be built by man. And so they ask permission to go cut the tree to protect their own bank. and they're given a denial. First of all, they have to ask permission. Secondly, they're denied. And you're telling me this is not onerous? You're telling me this won't have impact on value down the road? It will. Not only, but see, there I go again. Sucked right into the conversation. This isn't about the law or science. This isn't about the ability to use or not use. This is about rule of law, due process. Is it going to be respected in this country? Assemblyman Smith is quoted in the Homer Tribune as saying that without salmon, this just isn't Alaska. Fine. That's a fine quote. I say without private property rights, this is no longer America. And you and I were born with a purpose and endowed with the seeds of greatness, and our forefathers fought, bled, died on this continent and others to protect your right to private property. Are you, in advance of Father's Day, going to thumb your nose at those forefathers and say, you just didn't understand due process of law like we do today because the salmon are more important than your due process? I respect the salmon. I eat the salmon. I fish for the salmon. I've got family members that are commercial fishermen, clients that are commercial fishermen. I love and respect the habitat that is salmon habitat, that is Alaska. But we've got to protect our individual rights here in America, here in Alaska, here on the peninsula, wherever you are. Please do not go anywhere. Michael Droege is coming up here on Radio Realty. You're listening to Radio Realty. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in Real Estate. Along with me is David Webb, engineering the program back up at KPEN. On the line is Mr. Michael Droege. He is the president of the Alaska Association of Realtors. Michael, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, you bet. Now, Chicago-based organization joins anadromous stream fight. That's the headline and the front page of the Peninsula Clarion, written by Greg Skinner. And then, Michael, you're quoted throughout the article, and of course the realtors are referenced throughout the article. And I'm going to quote here and read a piece that I found interesting. Mail found in boxes around the borough last week, included a national lobbyist take on upcoming anadromous stream ordinance public hearing. The borough, this is the part that I've underlined twice, the borough mayor's office said much of what is posed on the mailer is simply not true. Yeah, that was my reaction. Well, he goes on, and this is Chief of Staff Paul Ostrander has gone on to, he quotes that essentially items number 1 and 3 on there are simply false, and basically saying that the National Association of Realtors is lying. What I want to do, or mischaracterizing the issue at best, what I'd like to do though, Michael, is clarify something with you. The very headline says Chicago-based organization joins anadromous stream fight. Did the National Association of Realtors approach the state of Alaska and say, hey, we want to jump in here?
No. The way this whole thing had its genesis, the Citizens for Responsible Waterfront Land Use and Fred Braun, who's a part of that organization, contacted us. That also includes some other people in the area, Wayne Ogle and Glenda Feakin and several other people that are involved in the opposition to this. They brought the issue to us at the Alaska Association of Realtors. We brought it to the National Association of Realtors, asking for our issues mobilization committee to help us fund or give some advice to the people that we believe this is a land use issue, and we felt it was worthwhile for us to take it to NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and they agreed to help us.
Okay, so this is, now when you say the National Association of Realtors, a lot of people think in terms of, especially when they throw out Chicago, because Chicago-style politics is so often touted. Essentially, this is a volunteer organization, and the monies raised that are used in such public awareness campaigns like this come from where?
Well, it's important to state this. The National Association of Realtors is the largest private trade organization in the world. And we are a volunteer organization which has one primary charge, and that is to protect private property rights, and then ancillary to that, to promote affordable housing, not just for buyers and sellers, but for renters, and the work that we do benefits private property rights, period.
Yes. Now, one thing that this article states, and it's clear to me, this is me, this is my opinion, I'm editorializing on the article, but Mr. Greg Skinner seems to have come to this article with an opinion formed. Again, this is my opinion, that his opinion was pre-formed before he began this article, and I'll illustrate that by quoting from the article in today's Peninsula Clarion. The cards were mailed from Virginia and paid for by the association's national headquarters in Chicago. When the organization's spokesperson in Washington, D.C. was contacted, she referred a list of questions to Michael Droege, the Anchorage-based president of the Alaska Association of Realtors and owner of 2 real estate offices on the peninsula. And I think what I read there, Michael, is I read him painting, the author painting a picture that this is outside money, this is outside influence, when what you've previously stated is just the opposite. This was a local group of volunteers that said, we need some help, we need some outreach help, and that's why it came through the National Association of Realtors. But this is not outside influence.
No, I mean, I got the feeling from the minute we started the interview that there was a definite bent. I mean, sometimes, you speak with somebody in the media that has an objective opinion, a journalistic, just a direction that they take no opinion and they're not editorializing. I got the feeling that there was a direction this was going. Now, it's important. You asked a little bit earlier about how that money is raised. And it's important to know that, in our organization, about 40% of the people participate in RPAC, which is the Realtor Political Action Committee. And then we also raised $40 per member for issues mobilization. And most of the political action money that's raised is raised $25, $30, $40 at a time. And these are all voluntary contributions. They are not mandatory, and we can't raise those money through dues. And so it's an important thing to note that when we go to the national organization, when we raise money with local organizations, state organizations, part of that goes to issues mobilization at the national level, and it's our job to bring issues that we feel are pertinent to mobilize that money for. So it is not this is not a Chicago-based effort. This is an Alaskan-based effort.
Right.
And further, to think that I have, he tried to paint it as if I'm an outsider stepping in.
Yeah.
Now, it's important to know that I used to have a place at Porter's Resort before it became RiverQuest for 12 years on the Kenai River. I own property at Happy Valley, right at Plum Bluff on the beach. I have been a part of that community my whole life. I was born and raised here in Alaska. I've spent 6 months living outside of the state in 50 years. So to paint me or our organization as some sort of an outside influence with Chicago-style money is inaccurate.
I think it's agenda driven is what I do believe. Now let me we just got a minute left here, Michael, but I want to quote something else. Droege was on, and I'm doing you a huge favor because you know that people are mispronouncing that.
Oh, you got.
Droege was unable to say in dollars how much the permit system will cost landowners, but said he doesn't believe that it will cost nothing as claimed by the borough. And what I'm getting at here, and I've been fighting this from the beginning, back in September when we were first made aware of this at the Alaska Association, is that how dare you say that you're going to take my left arm and only if I can prove what it's going to cost me going forward, that I can adapt to work with only my right arm, to mandate that the people that you're taking the property from prove to you that it's going to adversely affect them monetarily down the road, I think is misguided, misleading, and it sets a very dangerous precedent.
Well, they say that the permits are not going to cost anything, and that may be a case. But you and I know, and I gave the analogy yesterday. I said, okay, so they're going to increase the stream that they're going to be responsible for and enforcement of that law by 4 times. So let's take a look at our business and say, okay, we're going to accept 4 times as many property listings, and it won't cost us anything more to manage that business. It is not realistic to expect that the borough can assume the responsibility for 4 times as many stream miles and not have more costs, significantly more costs, in implementation and enforcement. And I think to be able to quantify that in exact numbers, no, I didn't have those exact numbers in front of me.
And nor should you be required to. That's the thing that gets me and assemblymen alike. This is a reporter asking you, but assemblymen have asked me the same thing. Well, and another assemblyman, the Assemblyman Smith, actually was quoted in the Homer Tribune as saying he had asked Story to quantify in dollars the negative effect on property owners. He has yet to do so. That leads one to believe that it's the onus is on you, the private property owner, again, to prove that that you're going to be negatively harmed, when in fact they have yet to prove, in my mind, with a local scientific study, that private property owners are the causation of a lack of salmon returning to the peninsula and or Alaska and are responsible for it, let alone the fact, Michael, we haven't even touched on, they didn't notify private property owners of this impending ordinance that then was passed and then notified of. That, at its base, is wrong.
Yeah, we just take the position that this was ill-advised from the very beginning. There was not enough public process, and we don't really care much about the amendment. We think that we need to repeal the very beginning. And so Ordinance 2011-2012 is what we're asking people to go and sound off on, and that is June 18th, and it's on Binkley Road, and there was a spelling error on the card. And they wanted to make that a big issue, as if our credibility was in doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
Are in the street name.
Yeah, exactly. Michael Droege, president of the Alaska Association of Realtors, lifelong, born and raised Alaskan. You're a great patriot, and you're doing a good job for the state of Alaska and private property rights in general. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Don't you go anywhere. We've got our Mortgage Moment segment coming up here with Rhonda Johnson on Radio Realty. You're listening to Radio Realty. I'm Christopher Story. In just a moment, you'll hear from Rhonda Johnson, Rhonda J. Johnson, I call her. She's with Alaska USA Mortgage Company. RhondaJohnson.net is her web address. 226-8815 in the Homer area, 714-4391. You're about to learn today's mortgage rates, what's going on with Alaska Housing, and do they still have their renovation program, and is it too late to apply for a rebate from Alaska Housing as well? But first, I wanted to invite you to participate. This is the first opportunity today you'll have to participate in the program, but not the last. It's Father's Day coming up. And what are you without your father? What are you without your biological father, your founding father, and your heavenly father? What I'd like to invite you to do is to text me what your dad means to you. It can be a word, it can be a phrase, it can be a small paragraph. Text me what your father means to you at 299-7653, and we'll read it on the air, of course, only with your permission. And I'm assuming if you send it to me, you're granting said permission. So 299-7653, what your dad means to you. We'll randomly select 2 winners today to go to the Mermaid Cafe for free. 299-7653, what's your dad mean to you? Rhonda Johnson, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, Chris. How are you?
Excellent.
And happy early Father's Day, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's, I'm proud of my dad, and I'm proud to be a dad. And so I just thought, let's just focus on that today while I take a couple of deep breaths and get away from negative issues and get on to something more positive, like some amazingly low interest rates. Please tell me they're not over 5%.
They are not over 5%, Chris. We're still looking in those low 4s, around 4 1/8 or so for the 30-year fixed rates with an APR of 4.387. Now, that first-time home buyer rate is still well below 4 at 3.625 with a 3.876 APR. Okay,
so again, first-time home buyer, that's exclusive to Alaska Housing.
Correct.
Okay, and I say that because I think a lot of people feel that there's huge advantages to being a first-time home buyer. Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't, but the property itself also has to qualify, right? I mean, if it's going to go Alaska Housing, it's got to have had energy ratings and ICBO inspections.
In order to get that rate, correct.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Except, that brings up something, Ron. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but have you gone through the process now since Alaska Housing's approved 5-year or older homes to be without those inspections? Have you actually walked somebody through that process yet?
We have. We've done actually several of them.
Oh, and it's working. It's real.
It is. It's working. It's real, and it's not that bad. They just have to have that 3-star energy rating, so you don't have to have 4-star plus 5 stars or the new 6-star now, and just do a home inspection showing that there's no health or safety issues, and we can get right back into those Alaska housing rates. Excellent.
I'm very, very, very happy to hear that. All right. Speaking of Alaska Housing, they've got a rural program in addition to one that covers if you're in an incorporated city. What's the rural rate today? Is it anywhere below 4 or is it right above?
Same, right at 4%.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I like to emphasize the positive when we see a little bit of a fluctuation and an uptick in the interest rates. I want to remind you it's okay. There's lots more that goes into making a good real estate deal than just the rate. And so when I bring up the Alaska Housing Rural, I do it very specifically because I want to remind you, talk to Rhonda about it, because with 10% equity, you could have no mortgage insurance, and that could be talking about $200-300 a month savings. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. And I was looking at this article today that was reported by Business Week, and Mongolia is going to cut their interest rate in half. Did you know that?
You're kidding. To what?
Down to 8%.
Is Jimmy Carter president over there?
So our fours are looking really nice.
That is classic. I like that. Well, and somebody brought it to my attention in a very delicate way the other day that perhaps my optimistic outlook on the housing market across America and in Alaska as well is a little bit over the top from the standpoint that it's artificial. In other words, the feds are still buying mortgage-backed securities. What, Rhonda, if anything, are you hearing that's going to transition out of the Fed buying these securities and back into the private market? And when that happens, what should we expect? Is it going to be a slight uptick? Will they hold the same? What's your analysis?
Yeah, I was just out at a conference last week, and so this was a pretty hot topic, actually. And will there be a QE3? Still unknown. Jury's still out on that one. If there is not, then once we see this mortgage-backed security buying ending, then I think that we definitely will be seeing these interest rates go up. I think that the general consensus is that by the end of the year, we'll probably be pushing the upper fours to maybe even the low fives, unless the Feds implement a QE3.
And this is something that you watch pretty consistently with you. You've got a data program that watches the bond market tick back and forth, and you'll be able to keep us apprised to this. As not obviously you have a crystal ball, but it's something that you're sort of keeping your finger on the pulse of.
Yeah, exactly. We look at it every single day and try to get a feel for what they might be doing. My advice: let's get something done right now, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
It's good advice. I'm shocked that you would give that advice. All right, I teased on this, and I want to complete it before we go. Alaska Housing is still offering the rebate program for energy efficiency. That's both on new construction and existing, right? There's still money in the well?
As far as I know, I haven't heard anything new lately on that, Chris. Last I heard, people were still getting their rebate checks. Yeah,
in fact, I just talked to Soren Johansson at Alaska Housing not long ago, and yeah, the $10,000 is still available for existing and $7,500 on new construction. But you've just got to understand that you got to get in line for it. Don't put it off. Get in line, and it's first come first serve. And so I think there's plenty of money there. But just another great reason to buy now.
Right, and then the other thing is that they've changed that energy rating. So we are now going to a 5-star plus and a 6-star. And so the new energy ratings are going to be where you get those rebates with those much higher energy ratings.
Well, great. In the final seconds, you tell me that. Okay, more with Rhonda Johnson when we return here on Radio Realty. All right, the time is moving quickly to the end of the clock here. 1 o'clock news is about to start. Rhonda Johnson did tell me she'll email me the new energy rebate policy, and I'll share it with you, I promise, but she had to run. Don't forget, Assemblyman Kelly Wolf will be here after the top of the hour news. Do stick around to Radio Realty because we'll go deeper and deeper into your private property rights. Are they being eroded? Do the Assembly and does the Mayor's office respect your private property rights? We're going to discuss that. We're going to have Kelly Wolf here, Assemblyman Kelly Wolf. We'll have our Homer News Minute, and I've got, what else do I have for you? The bag ban petition update. Those of you in Homer, pay attention because some people are waking up and taking back the rights of the citizenry. I encourage you to stick around to the entire show. See you in a little bit. You're listening to Radio Realty. I'm Christopher Story, your host for great adventures in real estate here in the last frontier, grabbing a hold of what remains of your private property rights, and I will not let go, will not back down. I encourage you to do the same thing. Won't you join the effort that so many people are putting blood, sweat, and tears into, and literally forefathers of yesteryear have given their lives to protect the United States Constitution, under which is the Fifth Amendment, which states, and I quote, "Nor shall you be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall your private property be taken for public use without just compensation." Well, two issues right there off the top regarding 2011-12, the Anadromous Streams Ordinance. In fact, was due process followed by adopting and passing a law legislating the use of your property 50 foot by whatever dimension wide your land is away from any body of water chosen by the Fish and Game Catalog? without notice to you? Is that due process to, under the cover of night, pass legislation that will affect your property, perhaps even criminalizing previously existing and historical use of your land without written notice to you? Well, guess what? Caught with hand in the cookie jar, the Assembly decided to pass another ordinance that would require any such future action and activity by the borough to be notified to the private property owner. You say that 10 times. That's how worked up I am. Now that's going to be codified into law that going forward, I say you've been caught with your hand in the cookie jar, Assembly. Get out of the store, go back to the beginning of the line, and earn your way back into the trust of the people of Alaska. You've burned the trust. You've spurned whatever it is that you may have earned prior to that. We don't trust you. I'm going to quote Charlie Pierce of Bill Smith. I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't trust your numbers here tonight. I don't trust you. He doesn't trust, and neither should you, that we're hearing accurate numbers, that we know what it's actually going to cost to govern some 2,700 stream miles. And already the borough, you and I, pay $770 some odd thousand to the River Center with 6 employees, and they cover 600 and some odd stream miles. What's going to happen? Of course, the budget is going to balloon. And, there I go again, right down the rabbit hole of conversation that I said I wouldn't discuss, because this is all about your Fifth Amendment private property rights without due notice. This law should be repealed. And here with me now is Assemblyman Kelly Wolf, who has such a plan to repeal 2011-12. Mr. Wolf, Assemblyman Wolf, Your Honor, Your Grace, Your Holiness, where are you today? I understand that you're out on the river somewhere.
Yeah, actually, working on a project with a group of kids on it, actually right at the base of the Kenai River Center.
Interesting. Now, you're destroying the habitat, said salmon habitat? You are going in and muckraking?
No, actually, we are planting alders today.
My goodness, you're restoring habitat.
Yes, we're restoring habitat. A great place to live, work, and play, and work with kids, and something that is near and dear to me, that I've done for the last almost 20 years. Restoring millions of square feet along different management systems throughout the South Central Alaska area.
I mean, that's to me, that is the most telling thing that you're going to hear today, is Assemblyman Wolf has for nearly 20 years been restoring habitat, salmon habitat. So, Mr. Wolf, then when you're portrayed as somebody who doesn't understand the science, doesn't care about the habitat, what do you say to that when you see these one-sided kind of articles that would castigate any effort to support and protect private property rights as being anti-salmon? How does that make you feel?
Well, I guess it makes me kind of chuckle, because usually when people say that, they have no foggy idea who I am. And, sometimes people say ignorant things. I've been part of planting several 100,000 willows throughout the Kenai River system, Resurrection, up in the Sioux, Quartz Creek, even on Bishop Creek. Did a little project years and years ago, and, Daniels Creek. So, I'm familiar with these little small arterial streams, as well as the major, big streams that flow into Cook Inlet, like Kenai and Russian River. Worked with the U.S. Forest Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and with ADF&G. So it kind of chuckles. I started doing bank restoration back when most people didn't even know what habitat was about. Mm-hmm. And I even got accused of, because I couldn't get Governor Knowles to pay attention to Youth Restoration Corps and a program that was near and dear to me. So I had to pronounce anadromous as an andromynous on a film in order to get the governor to watch the film just to be able to laugh at me. So, so now I hear it today pronounced all kinds of different ways, and I chuckle and laugh, because it's not about me. It's not about, how much I personally restored. It's about what the kids have done. It is their future. And I do believe that we need to protect our fish habitat. But creating a law on the books that within the Kenai Peninsula Borough that does not have the authority to enforce or police that law, that's just ludicrous, and that is, an overreach of our government, because it will grow and expand in government. If you want to protect habitat, it has to be done through stewardship. Create tax incentives. Get people to buy into ownership of protecting their private property, from erosion, and introduce opportunities. We have the perfect program right now. It's called, and it's not part of my program that I work with. It's a part of another nonprofit. It's called Streamwatch. It was actually created by the U.S. Forest Service.
And it's a voluntary-based program for property owners?
Yep. Yep. It's a voluntary program that gets people out and working along our Najamas systems and creeks and lakes, and they talk and work with people, pick up trash, and through the voluntary basis, people become better stewards.
Assemblyman Kelly Wolf is my guest. You're listening to Radio Realty. When we come back, we're going to ask Mr. Wolf about the process of leading up to 2011-12 and what he'd like to see in its place, if anything, and what can you do about it, coming up on June 18th. That and more on Radio Realty. You're listening to Radio Realty. Don't forget Father's Day's coming up. Normally, we do a real estate trivia contest sponsored by Mermaid Cafe. Today, though, I'm looking for your text message. All you got to do is send me your name and a few words about your father, what he means to you, what he meant to you, and or what it means to you to be a father. It's Father's Day. We're honoring fathers here on Radio Realty, 299-7653. As Dr. Laura used to say, she said, I'm my kid's mom or something like that. I'm my father's son. And I want to send a big shout out to Norm Story and say thank you, Dad, for teaching me the ways of being a man and a United States citizen. I'm still inspired by you and honored to be your son. What's your dad mean to you? Text me at 299-7653. 299-7653. On the line with me is Mr. Assemblyman Kelly Wolf, and he's such a humble guy, doesn't insist on being referred to as no prerequisites to call him doctor or his holiness or his honor, nothing like that. He just says, "Not call me Kelly." He's a great guy. Now, Kelly called foul on the mayor's, not on the mayor's budget, but he pointed something out to the Kenai Peninsula Borough Mayor Mike Navarre in a previous meeting from a couple meetings back. I want to play a segment of that, and we'll come back to Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Wolf first.
Mr. Mayor, I just point out in your budget, the Kenai River Center has 6 employees over there, and there's a budget of $758,000.
But I'd just point out to you that budget existed long before I became mayor.
All right, that reply from the mayor brings up a whole host of questions. I've talked to him about that response, in fact, and I'll share with you another time what he told me about that. In fact, I called him today to get his response on the Peninsula Clarion's article about the Chicago-based organization joins an Najamas Streams fight, and that the borough mayor's office said much of what is posed on the mailer from the National Association of Realtors is a bunch of lies. Well, no, the actual quote is simply not true. Assemblyman Wolf, you've seen the mailer, I take it, from the National Association of Realtors on behalf of the Alaska Association of Realtors, on behalf of the Kenai Peninsula Association of Realtors and the Ketchikan Board of Realtors. I'm asking you if you've looked at that mailer and seen anything that you would call false, misleading, or misrepresenting the issues.
Well, first off, let's time date this. At the Borough Assembly meeting of June 4th, when the Borough Assembly introduced for the public hearing of 2013-18, which is Mayor Navarre's Habitat Najamas Ordinance. What we had before us was the Salmon Task Force, or the Habitat Task Force's Najamas Ordinance, which was authored by Bill Smith and Chief of Staff for Mayor Mike Navarre. Their Paul Ostrander's, it was their version. What I've seen in those flyers, it fit what Bill Smith and Paul Ostrander put into that ordinance. Then the mayor got a hold of the ordinance and made some amendments to their task force version and took out wildlife and took out the structures issues and, tried to, redefine it as to ecosystems And so it took a whole different life on June 4th. Now, recognizing how flyers are put together, because I've been in a couple campaigns in my life, these flyers were developed prior to the June 4th Borough Assembly meeting, and then all of a sudden, the Borough Assembly agreed, by vote to accept the mayor's version of 2013-18 and set it for public hearing on the 18th of June. Well, subsequently, the flyers that came from the National Realtors Association didn't necessarily fit the mayor's new version of the Habitat and Anadromous Ordinance.
That's funny because that's not the way the article would lead you to believe. Interesting.
Oh.
I'm shocked. Well, I mean, if we're going to keep moving the goalpost, then any campaign to oppose this is going to have to be almost just it's going to be a moving target. It's almost going to have to be in real time. You're going to get sent an iPad versus a postcard, so you can just refresh. And Kelly, I keep coming back to this insistence. My absolute fundamental bottom line is they should have afforded you, the private property owner, written notice, a seat at the table to discuss this. It's time to simply just repeal. And that's the effort that you're making, that I'm supporting on June 18th. Now, let me ask you quickly about the 9-month process that, as you mentioned, the Salmon Habitat Task Force that was put together by Mayor Mike Navarre. Now, I'm quoting from the article. This is written by Greg Skinner in the Peninsula Clarion. A majority of the task force supported the measure that would repeal and replace 2011-12. Of course, 2011-12, no written notification. Now they're going back and saying, oops, sorry, we'll replace it with this one. And the task force did support the replace repeal. Kelly, let me ask you about the public testimony relative to the folks that came out and testified to, and in mass, in some occasions, that testified to the task force. Was that positive for this or against it?
Over 95% of the public testimony was given during the task force and the town hall meetings that followed was absolutely opposed to this ordinance and were requesting for repeal.
Yeah.
And that's where some of the assembly members and the mayors now, Mayor Navarre can no longer blame or state it was the previous administration. It is his ordinance. It is his. He has sponsored it.
This is just to be clear, 2013-18, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now that's the new replace repeal.
His chief of staff said in the Clarion today, the mayor sponsors this. It is his anadromous ordinance, so he has to own it. And
I don't remember voting for Ostrander, but it's interesting. He's all over this article rather than the mayor, and it says it balances, speaking to 2013-18, it balances the rights of property owners while protecting resources that belong to everyone. Now, set aside the whole collectivism speak in that and just say, let's go back to the original point, which is no notification given. Why are we still trying to make sausage out of this manure? I don't get it.
I wished I could put a finger on that one, except for the fact that, the force behind this does not want to give up.
I agree. I think it's mounting. And let me just ask you real quickly, why did you feel it important to bring up to the borough mayor at that assembly meeting, and forgive me for not knowing the exact date that clip was taken from, but it's been within the last month. Why did you feel that it was important to point out to Mayor Navarre that his budget called for $778,000 or $75,000, nearly $1 million going to the River Center with an employee base of 4 or 6 people? Why did you feel that was important to bring up?
Because the fact that we currently manage under 2118, which is the anadromous ordinance over the Kenai River, about almost 700 miles of stream. With this new 2013-18, will increase to over 2,200 miles. You cannot put that kind of level of increase without having a bloated increase budget.
Well, I think later here in the article I read that it's only going to be $8,000 as projected cost.
Well, I'll sell you a bridge in Brooklyn.
I'll buy it with taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the issue that we've gone through this whole thing. I mean, one of the assembly members got very testy, during the assembly and says, "Trust me."
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't trust. Several assembly members, and I don't trust this administration.
I don't trust me. I don't want to guess at something. If I were to go out and create a piece of legislation and just go, I think this is going to be good for everybody, including private property owners, let's just pass it and see what happens.
You need to keep one thing in mind.
Go.
There is no study, no current impact that has been brought forward that shows that the secondary or arterial streams on the peninsula have been impacted or are being impacted by any activity that's taking place on private properties. The only reference and this is right directly from ADF&G personnel in the task force, said that according to studies that were done on the Columbia River, comparing Daniels Creek and Bishop Creek or Anchor River or even the Kenai to the Columbia River.
Or the Caribou Lake.
Yeah, or Caribou Lake. Let's get real.
Exactly.
We're talking a major shipping transportation corridor with dams and nuclear power and hydroelectric power.
And 3 million people living there at the Portland-Vancouver intersection on the I-5. Yeah, I think that's got something to do with it.
Let's get real about this. The only habitat studies that have ever been done in South Central Alaska, the 309 habitat study done by ADF&G and the Mary King habitat study done by ADF&G have all been debunked by ADF&G. So there's no studies.
No, there's no studies. There's no sense. There's an erosion. This is another plank in the erosion of the ship headed towards sending the Fifth Amendment right over into the anadromous waters, the murky waters. Kelly Wolf, you're a great assemblyman. We're happy that you're there. We wish you all the best on June 18th and encourage people to follow the advice of Paul Ostrander. Expect the chamber to be full for Tuesday's hearing. Please let it be full on the 18th.
Please show up.
Please show up. Assemblyman Wolf, thank you for showing up on the program and being such a great Alaskan.
Thank you.
Now get back in that river and plant some more alders and protect the habitat that you're supposedly so against. I'm Christopher Story. Don't go anywhere. More to come here on Radio Realty. Don't forget your father this Father's Day weekend. That's right, coming up on Sunday. I forget the date. What is that going to be, the 15th or whatever it is? It's Sunday. It's Father's Day. And we're just so limited on time. I'm going to read one individual's text message, and I want to thank all of you for texting, and I'll personally text you back later. But I want to read this one and award our Mermaid Cafe Real Estate Trivia Contest gift certificate to Matt Bridges. Matt says, Dad, always there no matter what. That's it. I mean, always there no matter what. That really does typify Dad in general. You can just et al, all fathers. So thank you, Matt. Really appreciate that. Your gift certificate is waiting down here for you at the corner of West Hill and the Sterling Highway. Pay attention. There's a couple of things that you need to realize. The bag ban repeal petition was submitted to the Homer City Clerk, and guess what? Passed. Yes. It's going to be on the ballot in October. Now, I want you Liberty lovers to remember, don't forget to spread the word. Homer registered voters show up in October like none other, and let's put this thing to rest and tell the Homer City Council, get out of our businesses. Next, they're going to be in your bedroom. They have no business telling you or I the thickness of a bag we can use at the checkout versus at the grocery stand, where you put your nuts and bolts into, but versus the checkout, where you put your dog poop into at the trail of the Homer Spit in Bishop's Beach versus at the check stand in small business. It's micromanagement. It's bad public policy. It needs to be done away with. And by the way, let's not forget there's not even an enforcement mechanism that's been put into place yet. So check it out in the Homer Tribune. There's an article by Carrie Restino features from some comments from yours truly. In addition to that, in today's Homer Tribune, you'll see public hearing on streams protection set here, and that's there's some quotes from me in there. And basically, all I'm doing is saying this is government overreach, and I really hope that people can look past the good intentions and do it right. You want to protect salmon habitat? Work with Kelly Wolf for a day and see what that guy's doing up there in Kenai and the surrounding area for habitat protection. As far as this Clarion article is concerned, I intend on seeing if Mr. Skinner will talk with me on the program, and we can have a tete-a-tete perhaps next week in discussion relative to his opinion, because I read this as actually something more of an opinion-based piece than I do an actual article or a search for finding a fact. I see this as more of an opinion piece. I'd like to confirm that with him and discuss with him why this is not Chicago-based politics. Tomorrow in the Homer News, I want to thank the Homer News for making this half of the program possible, by the way. You're going to find a lot of things in the Homer News, to include a third and final part on Soldovia. Fascinating little community. It really is. Very historical. There's some bad fishing news. You're going to want to read about that, of course. Council delays work on water sewer rates, but approves funds for gas conversion. That was fascinating, and I'm anxious to read the article about that. Kevin Hogan, former councilman, brought up some great points. Plus, in the Homer News tomorrow, you're going to read an opinion piece by yours truly, that would be me, written in a story form, and it pertains to, guess what?